The Second World War can be seen through many lenses. Thanks to Hollywood, a popular vision is the gritty battles and the reality of the battlefield. However, the war wasn't just a battle, but it was also a massacre, an exploitation, and a famine. It has left a deep wound in human history, and French cinema played a significant role in capturing and portraying the realities of this tumultuous time. The horrors of war, but also hope and resistance in the face of Nazi occupation. As such, cinema of this period had an essential role in the construction of collective memory and in the representation of history. The perspective on the Second World War in French cinema constantly changes throughout the years. The early releases around the 40s and 50s tend to focus on the suffering in the daily lives of French people, which is emphasized through the eyes of children or through the heroic resistance, and focused on the hatred for Germans, which was prevalent at the time. In the 60s, many French comedies were made about World War II, replacing the idea of the German enemy into becoming a big joke, which usually mocked the Nazis' mannerisms and their bad French accents. In the 70s, the tone changed once again. As if the memory faded back in, the films were made somber and recalled France's collaboration with the Nazis. Over the course of the viewing, we will learn the dark truth of France's collaboration with the Nazi regime to the obscurity of the resistance. I'll be arranging my film based on their themes rather than the period, as many of these movies were ahead of their time, such as Hiroshima Mon Amour and Le Silence de la Mer, whose representations align with the movie from later periods. I've divided my festival into two sections. The first half analyzes the resistance and how the directors framed defiance along the periods, while the second half analyzes the struggle of daily life and perspective on the events of the Second World War. Starting off with the theme of resistance, our first movie, La Bataille du Rail by Clément, sheds light on the lesser-known aspects of the Resistance. It highlights the bravery and determination of ordinary individuals who risk their lives to fight against the occupying forces, a collective defiance against the enemies. 3 years later, Le Silence de la Mer by Jean-Pierre Melville features a French family living under the German occupation. It explores the themes of resistance through nonviolent means, as the characters silently protest the presence of the German officer billeted in their home, a metaphor for France's passivity during the occupation. The film draws a line between a Nazi soldier whose admiration for French culture goes against his Nazi orders. Moving on to Un condamné à mort s'est échappé by Robert Bresson, shows the individual resistance of a prisoner escaping from a German prison. His meticulous movement under constant surveillance from the eyes of Germans and ours. His escape signals France's independence and freedom, showcasing the tenacity and ingenuity of those who fought against the Nazi regime. And now to lighten the mood with the comedy, which pokes fun at every stereotype, from the shouting Nazi commander to the jolly English soldier and the incompetent but successful French civilians. La Grande Vadrouille plunges the French characters in an unintentional defiance against the Nazi regime. Back to Melville 10 years after Le Silence de la Mer in 1949, L'Armée des Ombres sheds light on the anti-heroes of the resistance, ready to sacrifice anyone for France, offering a realistic and poignant portrayal of the French resistance. This film contributed to forging a mythical image of the resistance and played an important role in the construction of national identity after the war. The next half of the film festival dives into the daily lives of French people of that period and their understanding of the occupation. The daily lives of the civilians are amplified through the eyes of children. In Jeux Interdits, directed by René Clément, a girl is left orphaned after German air attack on the civilians during the exodus in 1940. It delves into the theme of innocence and loss as the children create their own world amidst devastation, emphasizing the impact of war on the youngest and most vulnerable members of society. Au revoir les enfants, like Jeux Interdits, observes the adult world through children's eyes. The director Louis Malle evokes his own past to represent the daily life of children and the bourgeois lifestyle that doesn't seem occupied in any sense by the Gestapo, regardless of their hunt for Jewish children. Monsieur Klein, set in occupied Paris, focuses on the story of a French art dealer whose identity is mistaken to be Jewish, plunging him into a Kafkaesque journey to find the identity of a mysterious man. This film reflects France's attitude toward its own Jewish population, the fear of its own anti-Semitic nature that has been amplified due to the German occupation. The idea of identity is also shared in Le Comte Lucien, directed by Louis Malle. The film takes a unique perspective on the Second World War by exploring the story of a young Frenchman who collaborates with the Gestapo. Lucien's complex human nature and the choices made during times of occupation and turmoil raises important questions about personal responsibility, guilt, and the blurred lines between victim and perpetrator. Hiroshima Mon Amour, directed by Alain Rony, although not directly set during the Second World War, explores the war's lingering psychological and emotional effects on two unnamed individuals. The film challenges identity through their perspective of the war and of course examines the war in its globality, the horrors of those victorious and of those defeated. And finally, Uranus, directed by Claude Berry, which explores the complexities of human nature and the effects of war on society. It prompts reflection on the long-lasting consequences of collaboration, the wounds that take time to heal, and the need for societies to confront and learn from their past. These 11 films are silhouettes of French culture itself. As history molds society, these films tell us about the many historical perspectives, molding themselves in an image of France that needs to be preserved to attain a certain value of truth regarding the history of the war and to remember the many lives lost in that time.